Boston, January 15, 1919. It's a surprisingly warm winter day, almost too warm. People are going about their business in the bustling North End neighborhood, a dense area filled with Italian-American families, dockworkers and warehouses. Kids are playing in the streets, enjoying the unseasonable warmth. No one has any idea that in a matter of moments, their world is about to be turned upside down by one of the most bizarre and tragic disasters in American history. At the heart of this neighborhood stood a colossal steel tank, 5 stories high and 90 feet in diameter. It belonged to the Purity Distilling Company. And what did this massive tank hold? Over 2 million gallons of crude, sticky, dark brown molasses. This wasn't the sweet syrup you put on your pancakes. This was industrial-grade molasses, destined to be fermented into ethanol, a key component in munitions for World War I, which had just ended. The tank was a looming, ominous presence in the community, a dark giant watching over the city. For years, residents had complained about it. They heard strange groaning and rumbling noises coming from within. They saw dark, sticky streams of molasses weeping from its seams, so much so that local children would collect the sweet leakage on sticks as a treat. The company, however, dismissed the concerns. They painted the tank brown to try and hide the leaks, a cosmetic fix for a deeply structural problem. The tank had been rushed into service, poorly constructed, and never properly tested. It was, quite literally, a disaster waiting to happen. Just after lunchtime, at around 12:40 p.m., the waiting was over. Without warning, the massive tank failed. Witnesses later described hearing a sound like a machine gun as the steel rivets shot out of the tank's walls. Then, an earth-shattering roar. The steel plates of the tank ripped apart, and a monstrous wave of molasses, estimated to be 25 feet high at its peak, was unleashed upon the city of Boston. Now, when you think of molasses, you probably think of something slow and sluggish. But this was different. The sheer volume and pressure behind the wave gave it terrifying momentum. It moved at an estimated 35 miles per hour, faster than the cars of the era. It was a sticky, brown tsunami, a relentless force of destruction. The wave crashed into everything in its path with the force of a locomotive. It lifted a freight train car clean of the elevated railway tracks and hurled it into the street below. It flattened buildings, ripping them from their foundations as if they were made of cardboard. The girders of the elevated train structure were bent and twisted like pretzels. Horses, a common sight on the streets, were caught in the sticky deluge and drowned. The pressure wave created by the initial burst was so powerful it shattered windows blocks away. For the people caught in its path, it was a nightmare. The thick, viscous liquid was inescapable. It engulfed everything, pulling people under, filling their lungs, and trapping them like insects in amber. Imagine being hit by a wall of hot, sticky goo that weighs more than water and moves faster than you can run. It's a terrifying thought. The wave knocked people off their feet, rolling them over and over, coating them completely. Once caught, escape was nearly impossible. The molasses was so thick that struggling only made you sink deeper. The scene was one of absolute chaos and horror. Firefighters, police officers, and hundreds of volunteers rushed to the scene. But the rescue effort was a unique and hellish challenge. Rescuers had to wade through molasses that was, in some places, waist deep. Every step was a struggle. The sticky goo pulled at their boots, making movement exhausting. They tried to pull victims from the muck, but the molasses had a terrible glue-like grip. It was a slow, agonizing process. Doctors and nurses set up a makeshift triage station, but they faced problems they'd never encountered. The victims were so coated in the brown sludge that it was difficult to even tell what their injuries were. Before they could be treated, they had to be cleaned, a difficult task in itself. The molasses clung to skin and hair, and the sheer stickiness complicated every medical procedure. In total, 21 people lost their lives that day, ranging from a 10-year-old boy to a 78-year-old man. Another 150 people were injured, some severely. The stories of the victims are heartbreaking. A firefighter, George Leahy, was on his day off and was having lunch in a firehouse when the wave hit. The building collapsed, and he was trapped in the molasses for hours, pinned under the wreckage. He was conscious and spoke to his rescuers, but by the time they freed him, it was too late. Another victim, Maria Di Stasio, was walking home with her young son when they were swept away. She was found days later. The aftermath was just as surreal as the disaster itself. The north end was buried under a brown, sticky blanket. The cleanup was a monumental task that took weeks. The city had to figure out how to get rid of millions of gallons of molasses that had seeped into every crack and crevice. At first, they tried to wash it into the harbor with fire hoses, but the cold harbor water just made the molasses thicker. Eventually, they discovered that salt water was the most effective solvent, so they used pumps to spray salt water from the harbor onto the streets, slowly dissolving the mess and washing it away. For months, nearly every surface in Boston was sticky. The molasses was tracked all over the city on people's shoes, into their homes, onto streetcars, and into public buildings. It's said that for a long time, everything in Boston had a faint, sticky feel to it. So what caused this bizarre catastrophe? The immediate answer was the unseasonably warm weather. The temperature had risen dramatically from just 2 degrees Fahrenheit 2 days earlier to over 40 degrees. The company had just received a fresh, warm shipment of molasses to top of the tank, which was already nearly full. This warm molasses met the cold molasses already inside, starting a fermentation process. This process released carbon dioxide gas, building up immense pressure inside the already faulty and overstressed tank. The combination of thermal expansion from the heat and the gas pressure was the final straw. The tank was a ticking time bomb, and that warm January day was when the timer ran out. The Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, tried to blame the disaster on anarchists, claiming the tank had been blown up by a bomb. It was a desperate attempt to shift blame, as anarchists were a common scapegoat at the time. But the evidence told a different story. The subsequent investigation and a 3-year-long class action lawsuit, one of the first of its kind in Massachusetts, proved that the company was at fault. The tank was shoddily built, with steel that was too thin and brittle. It had been filled without any safety testing. The company knew it leaked, but did nothing of substance to fix it. The court found the company guilty of negligence and ordered them to pay damages to the victims and their families, a landmark ruling that helped pave the way for modern engineering and construction standards. From this tragedy came a greater emphasis on architectural and engineering oversight, ensuring that structures are built to be safe, not just cheap. The Great Molasses Flood has since faded into a strange footnote in history, often treated as a quirky, almost comical event. But for the people who lived through it, and for the families of those who died, it was a profound tragedy. It was a horrific event born from corporate greed and negligence. Today, if you visit the north end of Boston, there's a small plaque commemorating the disaster. A subtle reminder of the day the streets run not with water, but with molasses. The area has been completely rebuilt, and there are few visible scars left from that day. But a local legend persists. They say that on a hot summer's day, if you stand in just the right spot, you can still catch a faint sweet smell of molasses hanging in the air, a ghostly scent from one of history's most unbelievable disasters. It's a powerful reminder that even the strangest of stories can have very real and very tragic consequences. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and unbelievable as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history. Let me know in the comments what other strange historical events you'd like to hear about. Until next time, stay curious,